Yeah, again, these are the villages in Rolpa. It's very rough terrain, as you can see. It's a very underdeveloped place. The women on the right, my right, my left, your right, were both members of the Maoist movement. Admittedly, I were able to talk with women who were in the Maoist movement when I was in Rolpa. But this was because when you go into a village, you can physically see the difference between a woman who's part of the Maoist movement or has had contact with it, and someone a woman who is not. The women who are not part of the Maoist movement will shuffle around the village, are very noticeably not confident, constantly working and sort of slaving away doing one thing or the next. Will look at the ground and not look people in the eye. And if a Westerner or anyone from outside the village tries to talk to her, you sort of get not real responses, or a man from the village will come and you'll ask her a question and he'll give the answers. The Maoist women, on the other hand, you can physically see the differences. They will walk around the village confidently. They will interact with other people, again confidently. They will happily talk to someone new in the village, and that they relate to their own community on a basis of equality. And that was something that you could physically see the difference, and that was just a cultural sort of social change, and that was really impressive to see. This was May Day. Again, the Maoists since 2006 in particular have been able to operate overground, which has meant that they've been able to play a real role in trade union organising. Again, this was during May Day, and this was just one of at least a dozen different protest rallies that sort of marched into the middle of Kathmandu, as well as different rallies across the country. It's different trade unions. This one's mostly from the tourist sort of area in northern Kathmandu. You can see the guys with the long hats. They were from the Revolutionary Chefs Union. There was also different hotel workers or metal workers, etc. But again, it was just a thing of taking up people's day-to-day struggles where they're at and bringing improvement to their lives. Through trade union organising, they've got a lot of relatively basic things, but for example, in all the restaurants in Kathmandu, there's now a compulsory 10% tax which goes off the top of your fare, which goes straight to the kitchen staff and workers, which was brought about by Maoist union organising. Again, and that's sort of across different trades and industries. The Maoists, by involving and building up grassroots and rank and file and democratic unionism, have been able to get quite sharp increases in paying conditions for workers across Nepal. And the response has been that people have flocked to the movement, as you can quite clearly see. And again, during the coup in May, where the legitimate government was removed, when the Maoists tried to sack the head of the military, the Nepali Congress Party, which is the sort of the main right-wing party, put out a call to the people of Nepal to come and protest in the streets to prevent the democratic military from being assaulted by Maoist tyranny or something along those lines. And this was the mass movement that followed that morning. This was about the big. There were a few groups around Kathmandu. There was this was probably the biggest group I found. A couple hundred, mostly men. The building directly behind was a private college, so there was generally sort of young, fairly rich folks going out the front of their school. They would burn a few tyres, block traffic. This is another one of the barricades that were evicted by the people, about 4 of them. Again, it disrupted traffic. It sort of was quite effective in holding up Kathmandu. But there was no one that was willing to come out to defend the right-wing parties or the military. The military is so obviously discredited and in the wrong. And the Maoist response was to call out protests of their own that afternoon, and this was the response. There was multiple groups of this size wandering around Kathmandu, going to where the fire was, where they would put out the fires, get aside the barricades, disperse any crowds that were there, and generally just get back lights on and make it back so you could drive around the city again. Multiple crowds of this size, again, converged in the middle of the city afterwards and heard a couple of speeches and whatever else. But this, for me, sort of shows where Nepal is at. That's just a little thing that came out after with the current president sitting on the shoulders of the Indian Prime Minister, wearing the King's crown, and the other mainstream political leaders following along. But yeah, in Nepal at the moment, the thing that's exciting and the thing that makes it a revolution is not that there's been a Maoist government or an election or even that the king has fallen. The thing that is making it an exciting situation to see and really making it a revolution is that the people of Nepal not only have the confidence but the absolute knowledge that they have the ability to change the way that their society operates and set the direction and set the agenda for what they think a new Nepal should look like. There's still a long way to go. There's still a lot that needs to be done. But the fundamental thing is that there's millions of people who now understand that if they get active and organised and take action, that they can set the agenda and they can achieve the things that they want to achieve. And that's what makes it a revolution, and that is what I saw when I was in Nepal. So I'm more than happy to take questions if people.
Hey, what's the situation now? Who's in charge of the country?
Well, that's almost difficult to answer. The government is a coalition of anyone from monarchists through to neoliberals through to supposed communists and ethnic chauvinists and coalesced a sort of government together. But on the street, a lot of the fundamental work that's happening is by sort of revolutionary sort of committees that have been organised and doing different activities, and that it's really a sort of a thing of dual power, if you will. You know, like the monarchy, the mainstream parties and the government still exists, but in a lot of places it's at very least contested in terms of what it's actually achieving, and even that can change soon.
What's the military situation?
Well, the military, it's hard to tell what the rank of the military are like and where they're at. The military, the hierarchy of the military is very much aristocratic. There's essentially 4 or 5 different aristocratic families in Nepal who dominate the top brass and nothing else. They have openly said that they will not accept being disintegrated and formed into a new national army, especially if that meant that there were Maoists involved, and especially they would not if there was Maoists involved in the officer corps. So yeah, the military one is a question that needs to be resolved, but fundamentally, yeah, it's on the card.